Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest find themselves firmly in the Premier League relegation zone after defeat to Bournemouth. Are they there to stay, or will it all be all right under Sean Dyche? Joining me to tackle that question, reflect on yesterday's game, and ask if it's time for the players to step up is first of all Michael Temple. Temps, good morning or good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks. Not quite sure what to make of that performance, and certainly interested to hear Gary's view.
Yes, Res legend Garry Birtles. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad, thank you.
Good to have you both with us. Temps, kick us off then. Just what did you make of it in general, and then we'll branch out from there what Garry thought of it as well.
I came out of the Porto game thinking that everything was fixed, and just by following the logical team selection, familiar shape, and clearly consulting with senior players about the best way to get a tune out of this squad and what selection and tactical decisions to make, that everything was going to be rosy again pretty quickly. Simple fix. The Porto performance was such a marked improvement from what we'd seen over the past few weeks that I thought carrying that template forward would see things unfurl in a similar way. And then to name an unchanged side, to take that same front foot shape into an away game against tough opposition that we've struggled with against recent years, and I have some players in extremely good form. I was hopeful that we might mix it with them and come away with something to show, but it was such a bad showing first half, and you can blame an element of that on tiredness, but I don't think there's any doubt that there are still some bankable players in our squad that are hopelessly out of form at this moment in time. And whatever selection, whatever tactical system we employ, we need to get more out of them if we're going to see an upturn in results. I completely agreed with Sean Dyche's comments afterwards about taking the easy option in a passing sense at times, about certain players looking tired and lackluster. And maybe there is a need to rotate a bit more extensively or at all, having an unchanged side if we're going to play Thursday, Sunday. But I came away with a little bit of the wind taken out of my sails, having been really buoyed by the Porto performance, to see a game like that where we looked so far off the pace that there's clearly more to it, more to our problems than a bit of team selection and shape work. And there's a lot for Sean Dyche to do in the weeks ahead to restore this set of players to the heights and the performance levels that we saw so often last season.
Yeah, plenty to unpick from there. I mean, were you surprised, Garry? I wasn't surprised at all we lost the game. Bournemouth were a top side and they were very impressive on the day. Were you surprised by how comfortable it was for them or not?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, at the start of the season, Bournemouth and Brentford were everybody's tips to maybe go down, struggle from, with relegation because of the players that lost. Bournemouth lost more or less all the back four. Brentford lost players, and both those teams are at the moment. I agree with Temp. Sometimes it's so easy to blame a manager. Players get away with it sometimes. And, you can't keep making tiredness as an excuse because it's October, nearly November. It's not February. I've said this before. You can play, Thursday, Sunday. There's no problem with playing. As a professional athlete, you watch what sort of athletes do around the world. They go running 800 meters on a regular basis, 10,000 meters. They don't complain about tiredness. It's too easy to use that to excuse what was going on the pitch. And I agree with Temps again. Too many key players are just out of form a little bit, are just, flat. I think that showed. The one thing you can say about players, because of what's happened so far this season, the number of managers with different ideas, it's bound to, screw you up a little bit. But you have to put that out of your mind. You're a professional athlete and you have to adapt to what comes your way. You can't, throw a, wobbly and think, oh, well, it's too hard. We've had this manager. We've played all these games, blah, blah, blah. Players have to take responsibility sometimes. And, I like Ryan Yates, what he said about when Postecoglou went, it's down to, the players have got to take responsibility. And he's right. And, the Porto game I thought was, superb. I thought Porto were very, very physical. They moved the ball well. But we defended well against them. What happened against Bournemouth for me, and I've said this before, in training, we used to train and we'd used to do 3-touch, 2-touch, 1-touch in a five-a-side environment. 3-touch first, because you get closed down. I think us as a team, when we're on the ball, I'm sitting there thinking, don't take another touch, don't take another touch. And we take another touch, and by the time we've played it, we've been closed down. Bournemouth didn't do that. As soon as they got the ball and there was something on, they moved it quickly. And I think that they're little nuances like that. It's nothing massive that's wrong. It's, just do the basics right. Sean said about the basics, and if you don't do the basics right, nothing else comes. But the basics are, when you get that ball and you've got the opportunity, 1 touch or 2 touch, do it. Don't take 3 touches. Don't try and be clever. Try and be flicking it here, flicking it there. Just do what you have to do. And that's what we call the basics.
I do want to unpack Dyche's interview. It was interesting. Basics weren't right. One of the things that I noted down. Just one thing, Gary, to follow up on with what you said there, or 2 actually, just quickly. With changing the team, the only one I wondered about changing was Douglas Luiz, because he's had injury problems. So maybe I might have changed it there. The other thing about 3 touch, 2 touch, 1 touch is part of that confidence or not? We'll get into whether players have to take responsibility much more, because I think they do. But in general, is it a confidence thing that you're taking the extra touch?
Only they can tell you that. But that's brought up. You brought up the teams who move balls quicker. The teams that do well. It's all changing a little bit. It used to be play from the back, and now the number of teams who are going long, we look more dangerous when Milenkovic was hoisting it into the their half of the field, and you turn defenders, and that seems to be coming back a little bit. But it's just for me, the wide men disappointed me a little bit. When they pick the ball up, I'm shouting at the television, take him on. It's 1-on-1, take him on. And very rarely did that happen. And we created very little, and the set pieces were abysmal. They were how many went beyond everybody, and it's almost like the crowd were laughing a little bit. That's unacceptable at that level from that's quality of player. You can't say that's tiredness. That's just poor technique and poor delivery. And the manager can't do that. You can't put that into your body. You're in the Premier League. You're in the best league in the world. And if you can't deliver, something as simple as that, then there is a little problem there. It's a pity there's not an international break a little bit, because then you've got time to work. We've already heard Morgan Gibbs-White saying, the training's lifted people. You can see that it lifted people, but then they have to take it on the pitch and show everybody that it's working. Bournemouth, they just get on your nerves because we can't beat them. They get on your bloody nerves because we just cannot beat them. It's one of those. You get your bogey teams. Second half was better. We're missing Chris Wood at the moment. He's injured. Jesus never got any real service, and I think that's because they're lacking at times. We're not delivering balls early enough into the box. That's what unsettles defenders. Putting balls in the box early from different angles, different heights, different trajectories. And it wasn't forthcoming. And their keeper had quite a comfortable afternoon.
Yeah, the manager did say about not getting the ball in early enough from good positions. Just on Dyche, quotes Temps. He used the word subservient in the first half, said we looked tired. I mean, I wrote he hinted at questioning their fitness initially, but then he brought it up again and again in the interview. He clearly doesn't think the players are fit enough, does he?
No, nor does he think they're taking enough risk and getting in that state where you feel a mistake is forgiven. You can try things. And Morgan Gibbs-White is symptomatic of this. How many times last season did he spot things no one else did, thread a ball through a gap, run past someone, and find a way to make something happen? It's just not happening for him at the minute. I don't think that is fitness. I think it's a confidence thing, a loss of form. Gary knows how these things affect players. But from a Bournemouth perspective, I don't think they had to work particularly hard to get that result. The corner was a gift. The manner in which the field opened up for the other goal was a gift. And the thing they cottoned onto was that to shut us down, all you had to do was double up on the wingers, work hard to get organised and behind the ball when we tried to transition and spring on them, and totally shut them down. And they ruined Callum Hudson-Odoi's day. I think he was unlucky to be dragged because he was bereft of service from the rest of the team. But also when he was in possession, he was crowded out by Bournemouth and forced to turn around and stick it back to the fullback. So the manner in which they identified such a simple ploy to nullify us on the break in wide areas was impressive to see. But there should be a counter to that. That shouldn't be enough to snuff out our entire attacking threat and to walk away with such a routine 2-0 home win that it leaves us almost questioning everything once more. So, yeah, I do think there is an element of tiredness. I know Gary doesn't like this, but it's relative, right, Gary? They didn't play a European game in the week and we did. So they're athletes, they should be prepared. But Bournemouth are always going to be slightly more prepared. So I do buy into that. And it's something he'll seek to address. But we need to have an answer when someone counters our plan, because we didn't. It wasn't happening out wide. We had no way to change it. Drag him off at half time. There was no real improvement after the break. So I think Callum can consider himself unlucky there, but find a way, overload, step out from defence, be the extra man, create situations where he can be effective, because we didn't create too many opportunities for him to be effective and he paid the price at half time.
Not having that tiredness thing again, it really annoys me. I know people say, oh, you hark back to your time, blah, blah, blah. But I have to, because, we played on pitches that were shocking. Everybody knows that. City Ground was terrible. And we played, 130 games in 2 seasons when we were winning things. We didn't complain about tiredness. We just went out. This is October. For goodness sake, they've had a pre-season. It wasn't as they travelled for the away, the Porto game. It was at the City Ground. So there's no excuse for tiredness. I just don't get that. It was a matter of what you did. We had a few little breaks training-wise. The gaffer said, right, you have 2 days off if we're having too many games. And that gave you a little bit of a chance to recover. But not in October. I'm sorry. It's just the poor excuse, one that's easy to take on board. And it's wrong, because I know that, because my body was spent. I'm suffering for it now, because my body at the moment is not very particularly good. It's quite arthritic, and I know what I went through and loved every minute of it. We never complained about tiredness. We just got on. We're playing professional football. It was fantastic. It's an honour and a privilege. I keep saying this. So don't blame that all the time. It's not on to blame that.
Do you think in a relative sense, Gaz, when Bournemouth played,
we've done this topic already.
Bournemouth played Palace. Bournemouth played Palace last Saturday, and then had a pretty routine week of recovery, train, prepare, on we go. Forest had to do that up into the Porto game, play the Porto game, and then had a 2-day turnaround. So they are relatively more tired, fatigued, call it what you will, than their opposition. Of course, they're fit enough to go out and play a game of football, but I don't think their condition is quite the same as the Bournemouth players who've had that additional rest, recovery and preparation time.
You're telling me that when Man City were winning the Champions League, the Premier League, the League Cup, the FA Cup, they were tired? Of course they weren't tired. They loved it. They were winning things. They were the best team in the world. Tiredness is such an easy thing to throw into the mix. So what are you saying? So because we had Bournemouth didn't have a game and we did. What about Man City? What I've just said, all those games they played and all they won consistently. They didn't moan about tiredness, apart from the boy in midfield who said he played 40-odd games and he was tired.
Yeah.
But that is totally wrong because of what I've just said. The top teams win things consistently and they play more games than anybody else.
I'll give you one more attempt if you want, and then we'll move on. We did this topic the other week, and we've got lots to talk about.
Yeah, we'll call it a draw, but I don't think Man City would have named their unchanged side from a Wednesday to a Saturday in the Champions League.
Very good. Right. Just before we go into a break, just quickly, let's box off the goals, and then I want to talk about a lot more stuff. Gary, the first goal, I mean, it's obvious it wasn't a corner because the footage showed it.
Shouldn't have been a goal.
Yeah. Was it a foul on Sels or not?
This is not being a Forest fan. You cannot, when a goalkeeper is in the air, push him not once but twice. He did it, little nudges, and that's going to knock him off balance. Do these idiots in VAR who've not played the game not realise that is a foul? It's ridiculous. That was one position. Strikers always used to say, "Oh, goalkeeper always gets the benefit of the doubt." And they used to get the benefit of the doubt. You couldn't go near them because if you touched them or blew on them, they went down and it was a foul. When you're in midair, if you're rooted to the floor, different matter. But when you're jumping and he's just nudged you twice, little nudges, but you could see he was off balance. And I just don't think that should have been allowed.
Do we, Tams? Feel free to weigh in. If you want to disagree with Garry again, that's fine. Do we need to put a man between Sels and the attacker? Because lots of teams have done this, and we never protect him, whether he wants it or not. Is that something we've got to address?
If he's defending against Diego Costa or the Hulk, then he might need a bit of help. But it's Tyler Adams, and he'd fit in Gary's pocket. I think a Premier League keeper, and look, Sels isn't the most physical, right? It may help him, but it was a feeble attempt to counter the slight nudge that he got in the rib from Pocket Rocket. It's no penalty for me. Sels has to physically dominate that space, and if he's more active in trying, and it becomes hands around the waist or two-handed push or whatever, it's a different conversation. But that was weak goalkeeping, and there's no excuse for that. And I'm sure Sels would hold his hands up in the dressing room at half time.
Second goal, we'll do them in pairs, and I want to talk about Matz Sels, but just before we go into break, second goal, Garry, you've been in Eli Krupi's position, you've been in Milenkovic and Murillo's position. You can't, I know we lost the ball cheaply. You can't just jog back and not close him down or make it that easy for him, can you?
The first thing you do as a defender, the most dangerous person is the man on the ball, not the man who could receive it, because it might not get through to him. The most important, the most dangerous man is the man with the ball at his feet. And we backed off, just gave him a free shot. Yeah, it was a good strike. Yeah, he's informed, the lad. Fair play to him. But you can't defend like that. You have to put some pressure on when you can see that an element of danger coming your way.
Let's just take a quick word, and then I want to talk more about Matz Sels and a couple of other players. Next game, Man United at home. It's a 3 p.m. kickoff. It's not televised, but if you are heading back to Nav after the game and obviously enjoy the build-up with Fuller's pre-match, then you'll get a post-match show with Funboy 2. And on screen, if you're watching, you will see that there's an offer on for both beer and pizza for the Graz game. So if you arrive for 5:30, you can get a pint of Madri, and if you stay there for the entirety, you can get a pizza for £10 from the outdoor oven and enjoy the match there. Right, I want to talk about a couple of individuals then. Just on Sels, Temps, I had a quick look. In Premier League terms, his save percentage is 70% this season, which is decent. It ranks mid-table. His XG prevented is 15th among starting keepers. So he has regressed. Has he regressed enough for his place to be at threat from John Victor, or is it too premature to talk in those terms?
I think it's too premature. He has regressed. Part of that is down to that lack of physicality being exposed, and I suppose people being a little bit more aware of what he is. There's been a couple of shots have gone through him, which is uncharacteristic, and I think he'll bounce back from that. I don't think John Victor is the man that's going to put him under too much pressure. But if he has too many more performances where he's ranking in the fourth quartile for Premier League keepers, then there's going to be a list circulating around the football department come January. And I don't like saying that because he was such a key player last season. I think he has it well within him to recapture the form that he showed. But it's going to require a combination of him hitting his straps and the back four in front of him doing better than they are at this moment in time, because Murillo and Milenkovic have lost some of that shine and consistency that they delivered in spades last season, and we are having to chuck in a bit of a make weight in the absence of Ola Aina. Neco Williams has been the most consistent player for me in recent weeks. I think he looks really excellent, but there is that kind of slightly exposed screen in front of the centre halves, and they're not quite as dominant as they were. But to answer the question, I think Matz Sels will bounce back. I think he's 2 or 3 performances away from having that confidence, that moment, that save that holds on to a point or protects a lead, and will remember what a high quality goalkeeper he is, because he didn't do himself justice at all yesterday.
I suppose, Garry, is it a big change to change a keeper? Because if you go to John Victor or Angus Gunn and they have 2 or 3 stinkers, then you've got to go back to Sels, who you dropped. Is it a bit different dropping a keeper for an outfield player or not?
Yeah, it is, because it's a specialised position, isn't it? Goalkeeper always has been. Strikers always have been. They're the 2 positions that you want the same two players there all season if possible. And I feel a little bit sorry for him. I don't, Temps. He was nudged twice, not once. If you watch it, there were 2 touches on him. And when you're in midair, I don't care if you Peter Shilton, Gordon Banks, the best goalkeepers in the world, he knocks you off balance. And that's what the people who've never played the game in VAR don't realise. They've never seen that happen. They thought, oh, well, it's only minimal contact. If it was a player, minimal contact may be different. But when a goalkeeper is in midair, so I felt sorry for him a little bit in that respect. Yeah, it looked bad, but again, it was the delivery that was the key. Their delivery was very good. Ours wasn't, and we've got to step that up a little bit. I remember, last season Morgan Gibbs-White was taking everything, and then his quality dipped, and then somebody else was taking the set pieces more than him. So it's a real dilemma at the moment, because we were so good at dealing with the set pieces last season. We were one of the best in the league, and all of a sudden now we've gone back to the season before where we're not doing particularly well from them. We don't score a great deal from set pieces either at the moment. Can you remember the last time, Temps, we scored from a set piece? A corner? I'm trying.
Not offhand.
Betis away, Igor Jesus headed in. That was pretty soft defending, though. Yeah. Might be one of the only ones. Yeah, I think so. Let's. Well, just before we talk about Morgan, I'll put this comment up, Temps. When Ange was managed, all his fault, but now Dyche in charge, it's down to the players. I don't know if Mike's Australian and part of the Ange cult that seems to be in the comments quite often or not. Is he right? I mean, it feels to me like the players can't hide behind the excuse of, oh, it's a different football, it's a different system. So that's why I'm looking at the players. But has Mike got a point there?
I think if that was a performance that Ange had presided over, yes, we'd be burying him off the back of what happened in previous weeks. But I think having acknowledged that we can see the logic now in the shape, in the selection, that there is a certain level of forgiveness given to a manager that's inherited a situation and is trying to put it right from my perspective by making logical decisions, being situationally aware, and not trying to impose a philosophy which is in no way compatible with the strengths of the squad that he has. So yes, it's a valid point. We would be talking about Ange, wouldn't we, if that was another defeat on his watch? But it's not. This is the start of something new. This is a situation that's really challenging. This is a set of players who are lacking belief, I suppose, at times in themselves, and off the back of the results that they've endured over the past couple of months. But I still absolutely believe that change was necessary. I don't think that improvement was coming from Ange, and we still have every chance of stabilising under Sean Dyche, which I expect us to do.
Do you think we should be expecting more from senior players now, Gary, if they run out of a hiding room or not?
I think there's a bit of malaise still there from day one. The season started so well. Let's not forget that. We beat one of our teams who we couldn't beat normally, Brentford. We went to Palace and got a great point, and we thought, well, yeah, what a great start that is. 4 points, you'd have taken that against those two teams. And then it all kicks off the field. The players love Nuno, we know that. They loved the way he played, and everything was taken away from them in that respect by bringing somebody in who they knew was going to be totally and utterly different, which is bound to, disrupt the harmony of everything within the squad, because you're playing a totally different way. You're not asking one player to do it, you're expecting everybody to do it. And so early in the season, that's not always going to be easy to do. And the point that was made about if it was Ange, Ange had 7-8 games, and if it just wasn't going anywhere, didn't look right. The players didn't seem like they enjoyed what he wanted them to do, didn't particularly like the training, and something had to be done there. You've got to give the owner credit, because he did it quickly, and I think bringing Sean in was the right thing to do. I think he will stabilise things, and I just hope now that he gets a good time on the training pitch to go through his methods, to put into the minds of the current squad what he wants them to do on a regular basis, And he's also got, Steve Stone and Ian Woan, who were two cracking players for Forest. They know what it's all about. They're ex-players as well. And, they would never have complained about tiredness. They just got on with it. That's what you did in those days. So it's just a matter of getting unity within the squad. If you get time, I'd just take them to Spain for a couple of days. Get away. And that's what we used to do, and it did work. You used to come back refreshed, and everything was out your mind. Yeah, it was a different era, but you tell that to the great Liverpool side who was winning everything at that point. They did similar things, but Sean, he knows he's got a job on his hand, but he has got a very, very good squad there, and he might have to shake things up a little bit. I think Chris, when he gets fit, will probably come straight back in. Kalimuendo is the one at the moment. He doesn't seem to get a look in at the moment.
No.
About 4 or 5 minutes from the end, which is a bit unlucky. Strikers expected to do stuff. I'd like to see him, what he can offer, because what I saw on the video that was put together of him, what his all-round game, he looked pretty good as a striker. But you can't look at videos, and you've got to make your own mind up. You look on the training pitch, the mentality of the players, who are the ones who are working hard, who are taking things in, who are the ones you're thinking he's not listening. That's what Sean's got to take on board at the moment. And to have the backroom staff around him like he has, they can see, because they were very, very, very good players, and they know what they have to do. They know what they had to do on a training pitch and what should be done. So
guys, the last thing they need at the minute is 3 buffets a day and an open bar. If it's anything like where I am at the minute, I think that could get us firmly in the Championship.
Done.
He's already. We'll come on to it this week, but Dyche has already said they're going to have a very hard week in training, and they're in today. And he said the first 2 days are going to be very difficult for them, basically. So they've got hard work ahead, certainly. Quickly on the strikers, Temps, and I do want to talk about Morgan. Kalimuendo, he must be really struggling in training or something, I guess. Tyrell has the physical profile that I think Dyche probably liked, especially in that second half when we needed to get something to stick. But that striker situation is in flux at the very least, isn't it?
Look, any manager just needs to be aware that you can be a better player outside of a team when the results that they're having aren't going their way, right? We remember when there was all those calls for Sam Surridge back in the day, and there's countless players at Forest who have felt they've deserved a chance when the chips are down. But logically, I think he does find himself certainly behind Chris Wood and Igor Jesus, and he's a different profile of player to Taiwo. And I just wonder if he can be a true number 9 in a 4-5-1/4-3-3, and maybe that's why we saw Taiwo get the nod the week before and get the minutes on the bench at the weekend. But I've seen nothing to cast an aspersion on Kalimuendo. I just wonder if he has that. There's more long balls right now, or I think Sean Dyche calls it long passing. And I just wonder if he's the man to fit into that system at this moment in time. I think he'll resort to Woody as soon as he can. Jesus will be the starting striker in his absence, and Ty will get the minutes on the bench.
Yeah. Interesting situation. We'll see how it develops. 2 players I want to talk about quickly. One who's doing really well, one who is struggling, certainly. The one who's struggling, amongst others, we're not singling him out, but he is the hub of our attack normally in Morgan Gibbs-White, Garry. We were talking about him yesterday. His chance creation is half what it was last season at this stage. What do you do with Morgan from here?
Just tell him to play how he played before. When he saw things early, he passed it early. That's what I was talking about, 2-touch, 3-touch. If it's there, you don't need... I think sometimes he over-elaborates and tries to do a little bit of a trick on it, or, a flick. We've said this before. But Sean Dyche is talking about the basics again. If you see something, play it. Do it early. And then, we know how creative he can be in that final third. I think sometimes he feels the pressure that he's got to be the one to do it all the time. But he's got Elliot Anderson with him now. He's got Douglas Luiz with him now as well. So just go back. That word, people be saying, well, what are basics? We, ex-players know what basics are about. And I think if Morgan gets it and sees something, play it. Do it early. That's what I think. That's the key to the way Bournemouth play. When they get their key players, they do it quickly, and they don't stand and admire the pass. They go again, and they try and get involved again. I think I think that's the link-up player's got to be a little bit better in that final third for us at the moment. Nothing's really being created. We may be trying to over-egg the pudding in around the box a little bit. If it's not working, you're trying to pass your way through. Just get it wide and say, right, let's keep putting it in the box. Put it in the box, and just put pressure on defenders. But there was no real pressure on the Bournemouth defence, a great deal on Sunday. Defenders hate having to defend. And I thought it was quite comfortable for them at the weekend. They got the 18-year-old lad who looks a player, but we never sort of put any pressure on him. He seemed to cope with things okay. But I just think with the squad Sean's got, he'll be delighted with what he's got. And it's now just down to him to get the right 11 in his mind. And like Temp said, when Wood comes back, I think, he'll be straight back in because he is a threat. We know. Look what he did last season. He's more than a threat.
Just before we talk more about the relegation battle as it stands and all that kind of stuff, on Morgan Temps, I've got no problem leaving him out. I suppose the question is, what do you do in his absence? McAtee, as Gordon says, seems to be out of favour unless he's injured. I saw Brucey suggesting that you don't play a 10 and you play an extra midfielder, but then we're not creating anything. Do we create less with a flat midfield 3? That's open to debate. But I suppose the question is, what are you doing with Morgan?
It's getting towards the point where we're struggling to justify his consistent selection. Last season, he spent playing his way into Tuchel's World Cup plans, and the last 2 months, sadly, he spent his time playing his way out of Tuchel's World Cup plans. But cast your minds back to the opening game of the season where he ran the show, and when he's fit and firing and confident, he can run games in the Premier League, and that's why he was so closely coveted by Spurs and why we dropped the cash on improving his terms and extending his stay. But since that game, it's been a bit of a one-off this season. He played wide, didn't he, against Betis and looked equally strong. Since then, he's faded fast. I know he's had a fair bit going off at home, second child, all the rest of it. And Gary will say that doesn't take a toll, but believe me, it does.
But he's mate. Oh dear! I'm just having a stroll around the lounge just to ease my joints a little bit.
You listen off gas, but look, we need to find a way to get him back to what he is, because he's our talisman and one of our best players on his day. But he's played with a bit of a ball and chain on in the last few weeks when he's tried things that haven't come off. His one touch hasn't been sharp. He's lost the ball on the dribble. He's been dispossessed a couple of times, which has led to goals. He doesn't look like the player that was there last season, and he certainly doesn't look like he'll be anywhere near the World Cup team come North America next summer. So look, I probably would leave him out for a game or two. I think he'd benefit from that. He's certainly not going to be out of the team for long. He's got the quality and the mindset to take his medicine, to train hard, to find a way back into that team, and I fully expect the form to return. But it's gone past a blip now. He's put in several poor performances in a row, and nobody's undroppable. He was probably one of 2 or 3 or 4 that were for long periods of last season. But I do think he needs a little break to come back refreshed and shows what he can do, because he is a serious player. He could still find his way onto the plane, but he needs to arrest his stick pretty quick and come back and do a bit.
I think the game at the weekend is possibly a good game to have. People play, Man United, they're back in form. But I think it's a pretty good game to try and bounce back, without a doubt. You're at home, it's Manchester United. They won at the weekend, but, they look very, very fragile towards the end when things were getting a bit closer. So, in terms of the next game, I think is a good one. And it gives us the opportunity to say, right, we will put the Bournemouth game behind. You've got to put the Bournemouth game behind. You can do nothing about that now. It's gone. It's done. And let's just move forward. The league position is looking bad because of Burnley's result at Wolves. But you look at Sunderland. Sunderland top 3, Bournemouth second. Brentford doing well. All the ones he thought were going to have a struggle are doing particularly well. So it is out there for you. If you get the right system, the right players, and I'm sure Sean is looking at that pretty closely on a day-to-day basis, and he'll be talking to the players. He'll be giving them, I'm sure, the opportunity to have a chat with him, and because you need to get into players' minds after what's happened at Nottingham Forest since the start of the season. You need to know how players are feeling, what they're thinking about, the changes in training and all that sort of thing. Then you can sort of build on that a little bit, and I'm sure he'll be doing that. And the players have got to respond to it. I always say managers always get no play. You never see a player getting the sack. It's always the manager. It's always him to blame. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But the players, have really, got to stand up and be counted. And you don't get a better chance to do that than against Manchester United.
Just on one player who we haven't spoken about enough this season because we've talked about it so negatively about players, but I wanted to do a quick word for Neco Temps, who is Mr. Consistent, and to me is probably as good as any fullback in the Premier League right now. He's not flash, but he always seems to be delivering.
Came to the club as a lookalike for Jed Spence in a side that was firmly 3 centre-halves and wing-backs at that time. Found himself having to have a period out of the team to adapt to a new system. And there was a good period of time, Matt, where we were saying, good player, never been a fullback, so much to work on. And you just look at the way he's developed over the past 18 months to become that absolute model of consistency. He is a true attacking fullback, can get past his winger, so comfortable on the ball. He's got a trick in him. I just think that he's become one of the automatic selections out of pretty much nowhere. 18 months ago, I was thinking we might have overpaid a little bit here. Can he really adapt and become what we need? Olorina is shining on the other side, and he's found himself having to flick between right and left back in his injury absence. But yeah, he has, Matt. I think that's it. He's become a model of consistency, and I'm not surprised that he's being talked about in the terms you've described there as one of the most consistent modern fullbacks in the Premier League. Can defend 1v1, comfortable on the ball, and yeah, you trust him going forward as well. He's in serious good form, and others could do with taking a leaf out of his book at this moment in time, because it is possible to shine in a losing team. You're looking for players that can grab a game by the scruff of the neck where the chips are down. It can be hard to influence a game from fullback, but he just takes care of business, and to Gary's point, does the basics week in, week out.
Yeah, I think so. Go on, Gary.
Is that his name?
Say again?
Savona, the fullback.
Yeah, Savona, yeah.
I think when he's been on the pitch, he's looked pretty good. Defensively and offensively. He looks to get involved. He can defend. He looks a good addition to the squad. And Neco has to move across, but he doesn't mind doing that. I think we underestimate how much we've missed Aina. His contribution last season was immense. Going forward defensively, he gave you so much more going forward. You always thought he was going to create something when he went forward. And like I said earlier, I think the wide men have got to believe in themselves a little bit more when they get the opportunity further up the field. Just take somebody on. Just say, right, I'm going to back myself against you here. Back him into the box. You never know. You might get a penalty, whatever, or just get an early cross in. Put a bit of quality into that.
Yeah, fullbacks were the two that emerged in credit yesterday for me. Not really anyone else. I think Gary's got a call, so he'll probably come back and join us shortly. Oh, hang on, I didn't want to boot him out completely. How are you seeing? It was what I was going to do next, Temps, and I'll ask Gary as well. The chat is very down. Quite a few people saying we're getting relegated. It's never going to happen for us. We can't hit a barn door. We certainly can't hit a barn door. How are you seeing the relegation battle? Are we going down or not?
No, we're not getting relegated, but it's we're going to miss it by 8 to 10 points rather than 15 to 20. I think that when teams come up from the Championship and perform like Sunderland are at the minute, you realise it's going to be a very different race to recent seasons where the promoted clubs have consistently found themselves towards the trapdoor. Wolves are terrible. West Ham look terrible. And we're not far behind them in the form table, right? But I think the key difference is you assess our squad versus the West Ham squad. And Martin Samuel had a really good piece in the Times that you can see the fix at Forest. You can see that if enough of our players find their way back into form, the top six have got far too much of a head start. But you could see how we could begin to ease away from the danger zone with back-to-back wins and a little bit more consistency. And you compare that to the West Ham squad, where they've overpaid for a lot of players. They're looking to find a way to play Nuno's system with full Krug up top, and these players are hideously out of form, and a back four that you can't make a case for any of them getting into our side. You realise that, relatively speaking, our problem is one of form rather than the content of our squad. So you need the right manager to fix that. And yeah, look, Dyche is a somewhat underrated manager that does create a certain simplistic, solid, dare I say, style when he's given time. He's had two matches so far, one that he's aced with flying colours and one that was a massive setback, but he learned a lot from those couple of games. He's got a bit more time to put stuff into place ahead of Man United, who probably turned the corner at the wrong time for us. They look a very different side to the one that we saw last season. But I've already seen enough to suggest that we'll ease clear of relegation and get ourselves towards the bottom end of mid-table. But I think that's our ceiling this year, given the way that we've started and the games that are to come. But there will emerge three worse teams than us in the Premier League. I think Wolves and West Ham will be two of them, and we'll see who we can drag into the mire.
Yeah.
Can I just bring Liverpool into this equation as well? Everybody thought they were going to walk away with the title again. Is it 5 on the trot they've lost?
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Things happen like that. And I saw a quote from Wayne Rooney that said there's no leadership at Liverpool at the moment. That's strange when you've got Van Dijk, because he's always been assessed as their leader. So it can happen to the best teams. Slot has now got to address what they're going through at the moment. But they've not had the managerial changes we've had. They've got the same great team they had last season, plus, the people that bought in, who everybody thought, was going to make Liverpool untouchable. But all of a sudden, look at Tottenham, under a new manager. What they've done with Thomas Frank. They're up there. They're flying at the moment. So it's been a strange start to the season for many teams, I think. Nobody expected to see us down there. Nobody expected to see Liverpool lose as many as that. Everybody expected Arsenal to be there, Man City. Man United have turned things round. But I still think they're beatable. They, like I said, against Brentford, they looked really nervous at the weekend. So, yeah, was it Brentford they were playing?
Brighton.
Brentford. Yeah, I know it was one of the Bs, Brighton. So, they're there, especially at the City Ground, to have a go at, without a doubt. Don't be frightened of anybody. I think it's the perfect game to go into, saying, right, roll the sleeves up, we'll show the doubters, and let's just hope they do.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we'll stay up. As we discussed this yesterday, I'm not as optimistic as Tamps that it'll be comfortable. I think it's going to be a long road, and it's the table. The table as it is now means that we're going to have to win a lot of games just to get comfortable, and I think it's going to be pretty grim, and I think it's going to be maybe quite a few 1-0, 2-0s, that kind of run that's going to take us to where we need to be. But I think it's going to be tough, and I do think we're in a relegation battle. But I think we'll come out of it. We've got 29 games to go, and I think you've got to give Dyche a chance, because I don't think we'll have even had a training session between Bournemouth and Porto. It was probably 1 day's rest, 1 day travel, and then you play a game. So this week feels massive. I mean, before we come into this week, Gary, you think we'll be all right? Then you think we'll be fine?
I think we will, yeah, without a doubt. I think the big thing for Forest at the moment, and other clubs have suffered from this, the Europa League and the West Ham we saw when they won it, where they are now, it does interfere with the Premier League, because that is the hardest league in the world, and it's the one that matters more than anything. You've got to address that first. If we do well in the European competition, fantastic. But nobody as a Forest fan wants us anywhere near that relegation battle. So I think you've got to say, right, okay, that's a bonus. If we win anything, we beat Porto, that's great. But the Premier League is paramount. Let us get set up for that, and then maybe, do change, the system or squad a little bit, and give other players the opportunity when the European games come along. But let's get the Premier League stabilised first. And Sean's not daft. He's done a great job at Burnley, done a great job at Everton. He knows what it takes. So let's see what comes in the coming weeks. And we're 2 games into his reign, and the difference I think between him and Postecoglou, I think you can tell in interviews, in the way you saw the training sessions. Maybe I think there is a vast difference between the 2 individuals, and it seems like the players take to the Nuno way, the Sean way, rather than the Ange way. Simple as that.
Gordon asks, who are the third team worse than us, Thames? I mean, for me, West Ham, Wolves, as you mentioned. I do think Burnley and Leeds are worse than us. I suppose the next 2 games are going to tell us a lot, though, aren't they? Man U at home, Leeds at home, especially Leeds. Will we know really where we are, Thames, by the time in 2 weeks? We'll know where we are.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, the season isn't over after those 2 games. But if we were to take 4 points from 2 matches, it certainly looks a lot rosier. We find ourselves 3 points behind Fulham, 5 points behind Burnley, then Leeds and Everton in that next little group. So dragging Leeds into it feels like a good thing. I think they'd feel pretty buoyed if they were to come to the City Ground and turn us over, and we'd perhaps have to reassess if we haven't found a winning formula at that point. Unsure about the Man United game. I don't want to put too much pressure on it and say it's must win or anything like that, because it clearly isn't at this stage of the season. But you take a massive knock to the confidence and the belief if you were to lose at home to a newly promoted side that don't have the depth that we have, and shouldn't be as battle hardened, but they'll be buoyed by their start, and they'll be tougher opposition now than they were 2 months ago. So look, I want to see a solid performance against Man United when there's evidence of a plan and players coming back into form, and I want to see a win over Leeds. And I think at that point we'd be back on something like the right trajectory to get to where our forecasters having the potential to get to. But I don't want to. I'd probably put more pressure on the Leeds game than the Man United game. I think that's the one that we need to win. Man United's not a free pass, but we need to see some defensive solidity. We need to see Matz Sels commanding his 6-yard box. We need to see more cohesiveness in central midfield, more ball for the wingers, and a 9 that can stick it away. We need to see the fruits of the time that Sean would have spent with the squad by then. So I don't want to overhype the Man U game, but Leeds is the one that I really feel we need 3 points from.
Well, you look at Chelsea. The Chelsea game got Ange the sack, and you thought, well, Chelsea are going to maybe go places. Then Sunderland go there and win. Sunderland came to the City Ground and won. It is a little bit of a worry that the 3 teams who got promoted are doing particularly well, and that will always come into play as you go through the season. You think it might be the honeymoon period, it might ebb away, but at the moment it doesn't look like it. And you can't depend on other teams to do you a favour in the Premier League. You have to do it your way. You have to get out of it your way, and that's all you can do. You don't look at other teams. You can't look at other teams. You have to concentrate on what you do, how strong you are, and just get the players back on track. Like I say, it's only October going into November. If it was January, end of January, beginning of February, then I'd be a lot more worried if the situation were the same. But I don't think it's going to be the same.
I'll just put this one up for Marty because I said Leeds and Burnley. I mean, obviously Leeds are better than us right now. They've got more points than us by quite a lot. My point is that by the end of the season, if our players deliver, I think we should get more points than Leeds and Burnley. And I think we'll get more points than West Ham and Wolves. So that's why I think we'll stay up. Obviously, our players do have to deliver. I mean, just lastly on this, Temps, good teams go down. Leicester went down with a good team. Quite a few people in the chat have mentioned Forest in 1993. I feel like that was a bit of a freak circumstance around, obviously, our great manager and a lot of other stuff going on. But do you see that argument before we move on?
We put ourselves out there every week to have opinions on nuanced, balanced questions like that, where there's clearly no crystal ball as to what's going to happen. I don't think Forest is going to go down. I think that an 11 will emerge from this group who we will pick consistently and will pick up the points that we need to survive. Any top 10 ambition has gone. Some teams are playing slightly above themselves. I don't think Sunderland will maintain what they're doing now, but they're clearly going to have a bit of a cushion there and end up having had a great season in mid-table. But this Forest's place is not in the bottom three, and there are several teams that are worse than us on paper, but we find ourselves on the pitch at the minute being worse than the sum of our parts, when for a long stage of last season we were better than the sum of our parts. So if I was a gambling man, I would still safely have a sizable wager on Forest getting themselves away from this situation and others getting dragged in. So yeah, look, I'm personally confident that this team will avoid relegation, and if I need to wear this clip in 6 months' time, so be it.
I mean, before we've talked about systems, and we've gone to a back three at times before. I don't know whether Sean would do that, but maybe, just against Manchester United, go three at the back and allow Neco Williams and what's his name again? I forget.
Morato.
No,
Savona.
And just maybe try it against Man United just to keep things tighter. See what Neco and Savona can do going forward. Give us a different sort of threat. When we've gone that way before, it's helped at certain times. So there's nothing wrong with trying something new. It's just what Sean feels like doing with the squad he's got at the moment.
Temps, you've got a dash in 2 minutes, and then I'll wrap things up with Garry. Any final words before you go?
No, I think we've covered all the main things that I wanted to say. We've just got to keep believing that enough improvement can come from within to get us to where we need to be. Like we've been here before, right? In not too distant memory, without the wealth of depth and choices and decisions and combinations to try that we have now. I hate that phrase, too good to go down, because football's brutal, particularly in the Premier League. And over the course of the season, the league table doesn't lie. But I think at this moment in time, it reflects a pretty chaotic set of instructions being fired into these players, from a coach that wasn't happy for the pre-season and fell out with the owner, to his replacement that came in, upset everybody with a stubborn style and a manner of dealing with people that didn't work well. And now a third different style of manager that's come in with an absolute rescue mission on his hands to try and get us to climb the table. So, of course, the results are poor, but that muddled thinking and the amount of tactical change and selection change that's happened to these players, it's no wonder we are in the mess that we're in at this moment in time. But the stability that will prevail, I believe, between now and the end of the season will ease us away. So I'll leave you with that, and I've got to make a little work call, but good to see you, fellas.
Cheers, Temps.
Yeah.
Right, just before we wrap things up with Garry, quick word for Global Telemetrics. This is an interesting clip about the guy who basically recovers the cars and the things he has to go through. So we'll see you in 30 seconds.
Suddenly I saw a man standing at the top. It's like a film. You can only predict, just remember, someone peering over the top. Suddenly the gunshots, you heard, I was on the phone at the time to the control centre. And I always remember just talking to the control centre as we was looking for guidance to get back out the country, back towards Mauritania. The border was probably only about 32 miles away.
So there you go. They literally getting shot at to recover your car. So check out the link in the description if you want to secure your vehicle. And thanks very much to Global Telemetrics as ever. Just before we wrap things up, Garry, I just wanted to mention this week, Dyche has already said it's going to be a tough week on the training ground, and then we go into Man United. It is a big week, isn't it, for this group of players? This is one of the rare weeks where they're going to get a week to work with the manager. People in the chat are quite rightly saying we're barely threatening from open play. Dyche's record as a manager from scoring goals from open play isn't good. So, these players have got a tough task ahead of them, and they're going to have to knuckle down this week, I guess, aren't they?
Of course they are. They're professional footballers, professional athletes. They have to. They have to adapt to every situation, good or bad. And it's all right saying, Sean's got this reputation of But you see Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi, when they get the ball, like I said earlier, I'm shouting at the television, take him on, take him on. And it doesn't seem to happen very often. They either check inside or come back, then the next minute's back at the goalkeeper. Just believe in yourself when you get that. That's what you're there for. You're there to disrupt in that area. And, if he doesn't come off, fine. But, you want to be seen to be trying to do the right things rather than, sort of, oh, okay, well, I'll play it backwards because, I don't really believe in myself. I think you're in that position for a reason. Forward players are the ones that make things happen. They create things. Yeah, I'm not saying defences aren't important; they're massively important. But yeah, just when you get it and you've got space in front of you, nothing in. I can remember, if you remember the Liverpool game we played when we beat them at the City Ground in the European Cup. I remember one thing the gaffer said to me before I went out, and he just said, "Get in the box, get in the box." And when I picked that up from where I did, the only thing in my mind was, right, I'm going to get in the box here. And I got in the box and my touch was a bit heavy, but I managed to get in the box, and then I crossed it. Tony headed it back and Colin volleyed it in. So you remember things, back yourself just, in the right areas, and don't try and over-egg the pudding. If there's something on quickly, do it quickly. I think we just dally a little bit at times. And that's what impressed me about Bournemouth. Watch them every time they're in possession. If there was something on, they passed it. They did it quickly. And that can unsettle you. It puts you on the back foot as a defender.
Yeah, I was more impressed with Bournemouth out of possession. Their work rate is exceptional, the way they swarm.
Porto was out of possession as well. I think they pressed really well. But we managed to overcome that.
Yeah, well, the wingers were positive against Porto. I thought Ndoye had his best game for us, actually. He worked really hard. Callum looked more like it. So, yeah, I agree we need to get back to that, certainly. And I do think Man United, it was interesting watching that game. That third goal shouldn't have stood, and they were right in the ropes at the end. So I do think it's a tough game and a point's a good result, but I do think we can hopefully get it. We just need to improve markedly just from that Bournemouth game. But hopefully it's all there for us. Right, we shall be back tomorrow evening. We'll be recording with Mark and Rob Aycock. We'll be taking your questions. So I'll put an appeal out for that. And then Wednesday is with Henry Winter. I've already spoken to him about the relegation battle and all the stuff around the team and the Premier League. So if you're a member, you'll get early access to the Henry Winter chat, and do consider membership, do consider Patreon. Lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify would be great. Garry, thank you very much. Good to have Garry with us. We'll have him back soon, no doubt. Do hit like before you go, everyone. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.